so there's going to be a lot of bad teams this year, meaning that your first-round draft pick, let's say if it's Philadelphia's, in terms of the New Orleans pick, could be anywhere from 1 all the way down to like 16 or 17, based on the fact that if the Saints win a couple more games and a lot of these other bad football teams start losing even more, then the draft pick starts to kind of go down, or it could go up. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome into the Thomas Mott Show on a Wednesday. There isn't a lot going on due to the fact that it's a bye week for the Philadelphia Eagles. However, I decided to do something that it's way too early to do, that you're not going to see anywhere else. But, you know what? I can do whatever I want because it's called the Thomas Mott Show and not the, insert your name here show. And so I decided to go ahead and take a look at the very first 2023 NFL first round mock draft. Yes, a mock draft on, October 19th, 2022. And you might say, Thomas, it's way too early for this. Thomas, the draft picks are going to change. The players are going to be swapped in and out. I know. But it's fun. And Philadelphia is at a really good spot right now this year. Imagine the current team with some free agent acquisitions and 2 first-round draft picks. Things can get very, very crazy. I want to show you the current draft order. I want to show you the biggest needs that Philadelphia has. And I also want to go ahead and show you exactly who they could take. Will Anderson, anybody? Here with the first mock draft of 2022. For 2023. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our first little bit here, and that is the current draft order. Now, this will change. Yes, I know. Right now, we're only 6 weeks into a 17, 18-game season. There's a lot of things that are going to go ahead and move up and down, but you at least have a pretty good feeling on who's good and who's bad, right? Carolina sits at 1 and 5. The Raiders are going to win a lot more games, but currently sitting at 1 and 4. Detroit, are they going to win more games? Are they not? Unsure, but they're going to be a top 10 team. It seems like they're 1 and 4. Then there's Houston, then Philadelphia via New Orleans, then Houston via Cleveland, then Seattle via Denver, then Pittsburgh, then Arizona, then Jacksonville to round out the top 10. What's worth noting here as you look at this first round in terms of where teams are at right now, a lot of teams are 2 and 4. You see from 5 all the way to 12 are 2 and 4 teams. And so there's going to be a lot of bad teams this year, meaning that your first round draft pick, let's say if it's Philadelphia's in terms of the New Orleans pick, could be anywhere from 1 all the way down to like 16 or 17, based on the fact that if the Saints win a couple more games and a lot of these other bad football teams start losing even more, then the draft pick starts to kind of go down, or it could go up. And so this is going to change, but just a good indication of where the bad teams are, where the good teams are. It's kind of what you see on your screen right now. Okay, hang on. Before we continue, I want to jump in here and share with you guys a super exciting announcement. We have a great promo running from PointsBet down below right now in the description box. You will find the link if you're a first-time sign-up for PointsBet. And if you live in a legal state, I'm looking at you guys, Philadelphia, wink, wink, you can go ahead and get to betting on potentially the Philadelphia Phillies. If you guys want to go ahead and bet on the Sixers who just got started or future Eagle games, there's a great promo right now, again, down below in the description box via PointsBet. Super excited about this. Head on down and check out the link right now. Now, when we go ahead and look at the Draft Network's 2023 mock draft, there are a couple of things to go ahead and note, and something that you must take into consideration as more mock drafts start to come your way. Quarterbacks are going to be at a premium. This is a prime quarterback draft class. You think about last year, not a prime quarterback draft class. Teams that needed a quarterback had really no desire, like Pittsburgh, to move up in the draft to go get Kenny Pickett because Kenny Pickett was not considered a top 10 draft pick. This year is very different. You're probably going to see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 4 based on who actually needs a quarterback at the top of the draft, and I think the Draft Network does a good job of at least showing you that, right? Because mock drafts are never 100% accurate, but they can at least kind of show you where you think players could go ahead and go, where you think players could kind of end up in terms of, 1, 4, 5, 12, 22, whatever it is. So, knowing that Philadelphia has 2 first-round draft picks, let's go ahead and jump into where we are at right now. Okay, so Carolina won with C.J. Stroud. This feels very much locked in. Carolina feels like the worst team in the National Football League, and I think they're going to take a quarterback. I think Stroud makes a lot of sense for them. Could be Bryce Young. These two quarterbacks are very much interchangeable right now. It'll probably come down to if they play each other in a playoff game or who goes further in the college football playoffs, who will be number 1. But Stroud going 1, nothing wrong with that. Now, Will Anderson going 2 would be frustrating for Philadelphia because I think if Philadelphia is a top 5 pick, they have a real shot at getting Will Anderson. And as you see here, with the Raiders being at number number 2 and they don't need a quarterback because they just gave Carr a bunch of money, they would then go with the best player available, and that is obviously Will Anderson. And so as an Eagle fan, as you start, watching these teams win or lose over the next couple of months, you want to root for teams that need quarterbacks to be worse. You want the Raiders to win football games, right? You want other teams that need quarterbacks to go ahead and keep winning games here. That way there isn't a scenario like this one where the Raiders are 2 and could swipe Will Anderson at number 2 because they have no need to go ahead and take a quarterback. Detroit takes Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky. Would they take him over Bryce Young? I'm not so sure about that. You see Houston goes Bryce Young there at number 4. But again, it's showing you that there are 3 quarterbacks with the first 4 picks in the NFL draft, meaning if Philadelphia is somewhere inside the top 5, there is a very, very, very real chance of getting Will Anderson, who, being added to this depth chart, would make the Eagles even crazier than they are right now, with BG possibly, being done, although I know he is signed, but BG is getting up there in age. Derek Barnett is not going to go ahead and come back. You can use another outside edge rusher, and honestly, Will Anderson makes a ton of sense. Now, Philadelphia is 5 right now, which would be fine. Philadelphia would love to be number 5 because at number 5, you have a lot of options. You can stay put, like the Draft Network has them doing, and take Myles Murphy, the really good pass rusher out of Clemson, who instantly can make an impact and possibly be, a future Pro Bowler in the National Football League. We love some Myles Murphy. If Will Anderson didn't exist, Myles Murphy would be the best pass rusher in this draft. But number 5 also gives you the opportunity to trade back. You go from 5 back down to 12, or 5 to 13, or 5 to 14, and pick up, additional draft compensation, hopefully in this year's draft in terms of 2023, but also in 2024. And that means Philadelphia could continue to have 2 first-round draft picks for the next couple of years, right? Because you'd still have 31, 32 overall, your draft pick, and then number 12. So there's a lot of options right now for Philadelphia if they were to stay in the top 5. But Myles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson, if he was there, if Will Anderson was there, I'd feel very, very confident that Howie Roseman, who loves to get defensive linemen, would be make a very strong case to take one of these guys here with the top pick. Running at the top 10, Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC for Houston. Again, that's the pick via Cleveland. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson pick. The Steelers would take Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle, essentially, from Georgia. I saw some mock drafts. I think Philadelphia take Jalen Carter a couple of weeks ago. I know the idea that Fletcher Cox is probably done after this year is real, but you still have some really good interior defensive linemen. We forget that Milton Williams exists, and Jordan Davis year 2 is kind of supposed to be Fletcher Cox. And so I'm out on Carter right now. It's still super early, but I'd rather have a defensive end versus a defensive tackle. Cardinals takes Jackson Smith and Jiba. He's really good, and a lot of Eagle fans would love to get another wide receiver just because it's fun and it's flashy, but you don't need one. If you take a wide receiver in the first round, Philadelphia's crazy this year because, Devontae Smith is locked up the next 3, 4, 5 possible years, depending on if they want to extend him. A.J. Brown signed a 4-year deal whenever he came here. They do not need a third great wide receiver. I wouldn't hate it, but you only have one football and a lot of receivers. You got to spread the wealth. Jaguars go tackle with the first one off the board at number 9. Not a very strong offensive lineman draft here. They're not bad, but you're not going to see an offensive lineman go number 2 to a team that already has a quarterback. That's the kind of focus here. And then Broderick Jones, the tackle from Georgia, would go ahead and round out the top 10 according to the Draft Network. Now, as you get outside of the top 10, you see some cornerbacks start to go up the board. Cam Smith from South Carolina, who's very, very good, along with Keely Ringo, who might be the best cornerback in the draft. Those guys are kind of 1 and 2 there. See the Commanders and then the Seattle Seahawks not taking quarterbacks. Maybe the Commanders do take one at some point in the NFL draft, depending on where they're at with Carson Wentz. But in this instance, a good indication of where a corner could go. And then not a lot of other big names that you would, I think, recognize at this point in the college football season, unless that player actually went to your school. And a lot of these guys are good. Bryce out of Clemson is a very, very good defensive tackle. You can kind of scroll through here and see, someone like Bijan Robinson going 26 to the Dallas Cowboys. That would be crazy. Although I think Robinson, again, the indication here is not the team, it's the pick. And 26 overall, and kind of that Najee Harris early to mid 20s makes a lot of sense for football teams. Does Dallas need to take a running back in the first round? I don't think that they should. I think running backs in the first round are always an issue, but Bijan Robinson could be a little tricky. Although I will say this, if Philly is in the 30s, right? Bijan Robinson is very much alive, kind of how the Chiefs did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire a couple of years ago, where, they won a Super Bowl. needed to go ahead and upgrade a running back, and then you grab a guy like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire or a Bijan Robinson, the best running back in the draft, to go ahead and bolster your offensive attack. And that would honestly be justified if the Eagles had already gotten an edge rusher earlier on in the draft with their pick from the New Orleans Saints. Now, as you get down to the very bottom, you see 31 here, and you see Jordan Battle out of Alabama. What's interesting to note here, one, there are only 31 picks in the first round. You remember, due to the tampering violation that the Dolphins had, their pick is forfeit, which is pretty crazy. You lose a first-round draft pick for that, but they do lose a first-round draft pick, so you're not taking 32nd, you're taking 31st if you were to go ahead and win the Super Bowl. Now, Battle's an interesting choice here. Obviously, an Alabama secondary player is a very, very good player. Nick Saban knows how to create them. Think Minka Fitzpatrick, but is he a need right now with C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Here's what the Draft Network said, quote, "All the rage these days? Playing with three safeties. The Eagles have a super flexible player and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and a promising talent and Marcus Epps. The third safety role is one that could really offer some optimal personnel versatility for the Birds, and he pairs with Murphy to give Philadelphia some added dynamic play on defense to extend their winning window." Three safeties is becoming very popular in Philadelphia, but not for Jonathan Gannon. He's very much a two-safety guy, and so you want to add another safety into the mix, okay, but is he going to play more than Epps or C.J. Gardner-Johnson at this point, 6 games into the 2022 season? I say no, but again, a good look at maybe a cornerback here to go ahead and kind of groom behind Darius Slay, all options for the Philadelphia Eagles. But it's fun to look at these drafts, and it's fun to go ahead and kind of see where people potentially could go and where the Eagles could potentially pick when you get to 2023. Okay, I want to quickly look at the depth chart here just to kind of go over the positions that I think are the biggest ones of need for Philadelphia, at least right now, right? We have a pretty good sample size, over a month of football games, 6 to be exact, and so we know what the Eagles need and what they really don't. They won't need a quarterback in 2023. We know that officially. That's great news for all Eagle fans. They will not need a wide receiver. They will not need a tight end, and I would argue they don't need a offensive lineman. Now, this is first round, right? This is like a starter. You don't need a starting offensive lineman because even if Kelsey were to retire, Juergens takes his spot. Lane Johnson still has 2 or 3 good years left. They're fine on offensive line. So really, on the offensive side of the football, your biggest need right now in terms of next year's draft is going to be running back. And we talked about Bijan Robinson. There were a lot of other ones you could take around 2, 3, 4, 5 of the NFL draft. Whether you re-sign Sanders or not, I do feel like adding a running back would be a good thing for Philadelphia because Gainwell is not progressing at a rate you would like him to. He's not bad, but he's not a true number 2. And Boston Scott's time in Philadelphia is eventually going to come to an end. Now, defensively, defensive end is for sure going to go ahead and be a need with Brandon Graham potentially, getting to that age. I think Josh Sweat is very much solidified as the other guy, and then you have Hassan Reddick as kind of the other defensive end, although he is an outside linebacker. But you could see defensive end being a need. D-tackle will be argued a lot, especially if Fletcher Cox does not get re-signed to another one-year deal. But you have Hargrave, who you're probably going to extend. You have Jordan Davis. You have Milton Williams. You'd be fine internally if Cox were to walk and you didn't immediately fill his role with a first-round pick. I think you're great at linebacker. I think White and TJ Edwards have been fantastic this year. I think Edwards gets a 2 to 3 year contract. You still have Nakobe Dean, who they still feel very highly about. Kazir White's just playing better. And so right now, Nakobe Dean gets to sit and learn and kind of be, built behind 2 good young linebackers. And so you really don't need to add another one into that group. You won't need a corner if you're able to sign James Bradbury. You should try to sign James Bradbury. He's been fantastic. But there is the argument you draft one at some point in the first 2 rounds to kind of be the Darius Slay replacement. Slay's playing at an all-pro level right now. He's probably the best cornerback in the National Football League, at least this year. The question's going to be how much longer can he do it for, right? I think he's 32, 33 years old. Eventually, especially as a corner against speed receivers on the outside, you start to kind of lose a little bit of an edge. Not saying it happens this year or next year, but having his replacement plan could be a really, really good idea. And then we already talked about how safety seems set. The question will be, of course, if they want to have another guy in the mix because Kayvon Wallace is very much not seemingly going to be a starter anytime soon. So there you go. I wanted to give you a quick look at where we're at in terms of the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft. It is a bye week, and so what do you want me to do, right? There's not a lot going on in terms of Philadelphia or the National Football League. Give the video a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe as well. Some really big things coming up here on the Thomas Mott Show, so go ahead and stay tuned for that. Okay, I want to quickly go ahead and hit on some of the National League stories of the day, as we always do to end the Thomas Mott Show. Looks like Carson Wentz is probably going to be out for the Eagle game in, a couple of weeks from now, as he, of course, has a fracture in his ring finger, and we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. The Commanders have the Packers in Week 7, the Colts in Week 8, Vikings Week 9, brutal gauntlet, and then Philadelphia there on Monday night in Week 10, and so it looks like he's probably going to miss that game. I'm sure he's going to try to make it back for that game, but Taylor Heineke is going to be your starter for the next couple of weeks with the Washington Commanders. I don't know if that's good or bad news, because Wentz has not been winning football games, so maybe it's good news for the Commanders, but you were really hoping Wentz would make his return to Monday Night Football, throw some picks in front of the Eagles faithful, get booed. It would have been a lot of fun. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen, at least as of right now. Some final news here in terms of National League story. We mentioned DeSean Jackson a couple of days ago and how he, wants to sign with somebody. He went on a podcast, the I Am Athlete podcast, and kind of talked about how he wants to go to the Eagles, Packers, or Ravens. I already said I don't want the 35-year-old being an Eagle because you just don't need him on the Eagles squad. Well, it looks like he listened to me, and he's going to go ahead and sign with the Baltimore Ravens, who have made him an offer to go ahead and bring him to the city of Baltimore. It's kind of a, win-win situation right now for the Baltimore front office because they need weapons on the outside for Lamar Jackson, but the expectations for DeSean Jackson can only be exceeded. If he does nothing this year for Baltimore, everyone in Baltimore would say, oh, well, he was too old anyway. But if he does do something, then it looks like a great move to go ahead and help out Lamar Jackson, who has been great in the first half of games this year, not so good in the second half of games, and that's why they need another offensive weapon on the outside because their running attack after the J.K. Dobbins injury last year has not been as good, and Lamar has been extremely inaccurate throwing the football, and that's why the Ravens currently are sitting at 3-3 and very much in the mix of it, in the heat of things in the AFC North and the rest of the AFC as well. Okay, there you go. There's your update here in terms of what's going on inside the National Football League as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. We will keep an eye out for more things going on as, listen, it's a bye week. It's not like there's going to be some sort of breaking stuff going on, but as we talked about on my Eagle Ultimate Creator live stream a couple of days ago, it's a bye week. Maybe if you want to make a trade could happen, and obviously we'll cover everything happening with the Eagles and the NFL here on the Thomas Mott Show as we continue on. I want to give a big shout out to all the new subscribers here on the Thomas Mott Show. We're growing at a crazy big rate. We're approaching 5,000 subs. It's been fantastic. I appreciate you guys. If you like what you saw, obviously thumbs up because YouTube loves that, and stay tuned for the next one. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.